Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to our latest explainer. Today we're doing a deep dive book review summary of, honestly, one of the most infamous texts in human history. We're unpacking a highly influential 16th century book, Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, really trying to understand exactly how its ancient rules map onto modern power dynamics.
Now, before we go any further, I want to make our stance crystal clear. As the source material explicitly states, I'm simply presenting information here, and it is completely up to the viewer to decide what he wants to do with that information. We are absolutely not endorsing these aggressive ideas, right? We aren't telling you to go out and act this way. We're just neutrally exploring the text's deeply provocative observations on human nature, and, well, how the world actually operates behind the curtain. So, let me hit you with a quick question. Do you want to see Kim Kardashian from 20 different angles every single day on your computer screen? Most people will instantly answer, no way, of course not. I want to educate myself. I should be reading philosophy. But is that what the data shows? This is a massive pattern interrupt, I know, but it perfectly proves a point about what people claim they want versus what they actually click on.
Section 1. The ultimate reality check. Idealism versus reality.
And that brings us to Machiavelli's core thesis about the incredibly uncomfortable difference between idealism and reality. He writes, "How we live is so different from how we ought to live, that he who studies what ought to be done rather than what is done will learn the way to his downfall rather than to his preservation." Basically, Machiavelli is looking at us across 5 centuries of history and bluntly telling us to get real. You know, we all have these grand visions of how society should be, but reality just doesn't correspond to that at all.
And this brilliantly illustrates that point. Think about digital marketing. If you push Voltaire to people's feeds because that's what they ought to read, you fail. But the marketer who pushes the 10 celebrities who got drunk and threw up this week, they get all the clicks, and they make an absolute fortune. I know it makes people genuinely angry to hear this, but if you don't understand it, your well-intentioned dreams are going to be completely shattered.
Section 2. Why honest players lose. Truth in competition.
Now, this dynamic doesn't just stop at internet marketing. It totally escalates into the broader arenas of modern life, where honest players often get crushed. When we compare the honest loser against the Machiavellian winner across different fields, a pretty stark pattern emerges. In marketing, as we just saw, Voltaire loses to celebrity gossip. But look at politics. The source argues impartially that you simply cannot be a perfectly honest politician and win. If you get on stage and say, read a book, work hard, and in the long run you'll see results, you are going to get 0 votes. But the dishonest competitor who promises to magically generate money out of nowhere and just hand it out to everyone, they win the election every time.
So, the crucial point here is this uncomfortable quote, "Hence a prince who wants to keep his authority must learn how not to be good." To survive in highly competitive environments, leaders must sometimes abandon goodness, or at the very least, know exactly how to put it aside when necessity demands it. Let me challenge you directly on this. Would you pay your employees 3 times as much? People with absolutely no business experience love to claim that if they were in charge, they'd be incredibly generous. But if an idealistic business owner actually did this, paying triple market rates just to be a good person, they would literally be bankrupt in 2 weeks. That is the harsh reality of why they aren't in charge.
Section 3. The illusion of goodness. Mastering PR.
So, if you can't always afford to be good in reality, what do? Well, you master public relations. Machiavelli wrote, "The vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar." Because the general public is constantly distracted by superficial things, like those top 10 lists of puking celebrities, leaders don't actually need to possess virtue. They only need to manufacture the appearance of virtue.
Take the modern good philanthropist. The public looks at them and thinks they are the absolute paragon of goodness. But how did they actually build their multi-billion-dollar empire? Yeah, seldom by being nice. Behind the scenes, they were often the ruthless competitor, engaging in the nastiest lawsuits and aggressive acquisitions to completely crush their rivals.
This aligns with a rather chilling piece of logic from the text. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed. The injury that is to be done to a man ought to be of such a kind that one does not stand in fear of revenge. Machiavelli is essentially arguing that if you absolutely must harm a competitor, the defeat has to be so total that they physically or financially cannot retaliate against you. This is all part of what we can call the game of appearances. Take politicians, for example, who clearly do not care about religion in their private lives, but who will publicly act like Jesus is personally guiding their every political decision. Why do they do that? Because it secures votes. They pretend that without this divine devotion, the whole state would collapse. It's a highly calculated act to appear virtuous to the crowd. Section 4. Delegating the dirty work. Keeping clean hands. Okay, we're about to look at one of the most repulsive yet incredibly timeless historical strategies for maintaining power and keeping a pristine public image. Machiavelli gives us this golden rule. Princes must delegate difficult tasks to others and keep popular ones for themselves. To illustrate this, the source shares the intense historical story of Cesare Borgia. Borgia needed to bring a chaotic region under control, which required extreme cruelty. But he knew that doing it himself would make the people forever hate him. Let's move to and see how this builds. To achieve his goal, he used what we can call the Borgia method. Step 1, Borgia appoints a notoriously cruel henchman to go in, chop heads off, and bring control to the region. Step 2, now that the public is furious at the cruelty, Borgia has that very henchman cut in half and thrown into the public square. Step 3, he then immediately provides the citizens with food and entertainment. Step 4, Borgia reaps all the benefits of a pacified region, but his own hands seem completely clean. Wild, right?
Now snap back to the 21st century. People in power still use this exact playbook. The source points out a massively popular YouTuber with incredibly scammy marketing. When he finally gets called out, what does he do? He makes an honest video blaming his marketing team. He says, "It's not me, guys, it's just my marketers. I have no say in my own business." And his followers actually believe him. He throws his own employees under the bus to avoid accountability, just exactly like a 16th century prince blaming his executed henchmen. Section 5. How not to be sheep, the defensive playbook. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is we've covered a lot of dark strategies in this book review summary, but here is the core takeaway. Knowledge isn't inherently right or wrong. It depends entirely on what you do with it. We aren't studying this material so you can become some manipulative psychopath. We are learning this strictly for your defense. Consider the difference between a Machiavellian monster and a defensive realist. Trying to apply Machiavellian's rule that it is safer to be feared than loved to your personal relationships. That would create a miserable life. Nobody wants to rule their partner through fear. But as a defensive realist, you absolutely must know these tactics so you don't walk into a business setting and get totally crushed by ruthless competitors or played by some scam artist claiming innocence.
So as we conclude this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Will you use this knowledge to become a monster or to stop being a sheep? The playbook is out there, and the game is being played whether you choose to participate or not. It is entirely up to you to recognize these tactics so you can navigate reality without getting slaughtered. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Stay sharp, and I'll catch you in the next one.